No children at Christmas this year, my mother-in-law Marion declared, adjusting her designer glasses with that self-satisfied smirk I'd grown to detest. I'm hosting my charity circle friends, and we want a sophisticated evening. Surely you understand. I stood in her pristine kitchen, where my kids had baked cookies with her last Christmas, watching as she meticulously arranged appetizer plates as if my world hadn't just shattered. My 7-year-old Emma and 5-year-old Lucas had been making handmade ornaments for weeks, and they were excited to show their grandmother their creations. But Marion, I started, keeping my voice steady. The kids have been looking forward to this for months. They've even made you special. She cut me off with a wave of her manicured hand. Olivia, dear, you know how children can be. They'll get overexcited and make a mess, and my friends from the Heritage Society are particular. Besides, wouldn't you and James enjoy an adult evening for once? The condescension in her voice made my skin crawl. My husband James was away on a business trip, conveniently missing this conversation. He'd been raised by this woman who valued appearance over everything else, and sometimes I saw glimpses of her influence in him, though he'd grown to be a warmer person. The kids will be devastated, I said quietly. Marion sighed dramatically. They'll get over it. Children are resilient. Now, about the dress code, I'm thinking of a black tie. Do you still have that blue dress from Sarah's wedding? The one that almost fits you properly? I felt heat rise to my cheeks but kept my expression neutral. This wasn't the first time Marion had taken jabs at my appearance or parenting, but excluding my children from Christmas, that was crossing a line I couldn't ignore. That evening, I sat on Emma's bed, trying to explain why we wouldn't be going to Grandma's for Christmas. Her lower lip trembled as she clutched the ornament she'd made, a carefully decorated photo frame with a picture of her and Lucas with their grandmother. But Mommy, I made this special for Grandma Marion. She said she wanted more pictures of us for her fancy house last time. Lucas heard the conversation from his room and came padding in, dragging his favorite dinosaur blanket. Did we do something bad? He asked, his big brown eyes filling with tears. No, sweetie. I pulled them both close. Grandma's just having a grown-up party this year. But it's Christmas, Lucas whispered into my shoulder. That night, after the kids were asleep, I made some calls. First, I thanked my best friend Anna, who ran the local community center. Then, I thanked my sister Katie, and finally, I thanked Pastor Mike from our church. By the time I finished, a plan was forming. The following day, Marion called. Olivia, I've been thinking about the menu. You're not still doing that gluten-free thing, are you? It makes planning so complicated. Don't worry about me, Marion, I replied calmly. I'll eat whatever you serve. Wonderful. She sounded relieved. And you've explained the new arrangement to the children? Yes, they understand they're not welcome at their grandmother's for Christmas. There was a slight pause. Don't be dramatic, Olivia. I'm simply trying to host an elegant evening. My friends from the Heritage Society are very influential people. Of course, Marion, I understand completely. My tone worried her because she added, we can do something with the children another time. Perhaps the day after Christmas. That won't be necessary, I replied. We've made other plans. Over the next few weeks, I watched Marion post daily updates about her upcoming sophisticated Christmas soiree on social media. Pictures of her elaborate decorations hint at the expensive catering and constant mentions of her prestigious guest list. Her Heritage Society friends commented enthusiastically on each post, praising her impeccable taste. What she didn't know was that I'd been busy too. Anna had helped me organize something at the community center. Katie had reached out to other families we knew. Pastor Mike had made some calls of his own. The day before the party, Marion called again. Olivia, dear, remember to arrive by 6 tomorrow. And do try to do something with your hair. Elizabeth from the Heritage Society is bringing her photographer to document the evening. Of course, Marion. Wouldn't want to embarrass you in front of your important friends. That's the spirit. She missed the sarcasm completely. Oh, and James called. His flight's been delayed, but he should return just in time for the party. I smiled to myself. James knew exactly what time his flight was getting in, and it wasn't what his mother thought. We'd had a long talk about her behavior, and he was entirely on my side for the first time in our marriage. I helped Emma and Lucas pack their handmade ornaments that Christmas Eve morning, including the photo frame Emma had worked so hard on. "Where are we taking them, Mommy?" she asked. "Somewhere special, sweetheart. Somewhere where they'll be appreciated." As I loaded the kids into our car, I caught sight of Marion's house across the street. Caterers were already arriving, setting up for her sophisticated soiree. She stood in the driveway, directing them with grand gestures, every inch the society matron she aspired to be. She saw us getting into the car and waved, probably congratulating herself on how well her plan had worked out. I waved back, smiling brightly. "Ready for a real Christmas celebration?" I asked my children. They nodded enthusiastically, already forgetting their earlier disappointment. Marion had no idea what she was about to miss. Still, more importantly, she had no idea what her precious Heritage Society friends were about to learn about their perfect hostess who banned her grandchildren from Christmas. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about showing people exactly who they chose to be. And Marion had made her choice very clear indeed. Marion's party was in full swing when I arrived. The valet took my car, and I smoothed down my dress, not the blue one she'd mentioned, but a stunning red number that made me feel confident and strong. The foyer of her Victorian mansion was decked out in what she called sophisticated Christmas decor, all white and silver, with not a hint of childhood joy or traditional holiday warmth. Perfect for someone who'd banned children from Christmas. "Olivia, darling." Marion swooped in, air-kissing my cheeks. "You look festive," she added, eyeing my red dress with barely concealed disapproval. "Come, let me introduce you to everyone." She paraded me around like a prop, introducing me to her Heritage Society friends. "This is my daughter-in-law," she'd say as if it were my only identity. Elizabeth, the society president, was holding court near the fireplace, her silver hair perfectly coiffed. "Marion has told us so much about your family," Elizabeth said warmly. "Where are your children tonight? I'd love to meet my dear friend's grandchildren." I felt Marion stiffen beside me. Before she could speak, I smiled brightly. "Oh, they're at the community center Christmas celebration. They're part of something very special tonight." "The community center?" Elizabeth's eyes lit up. "The one on Maple Street? I'm on their board of directors. I didn't know Marion's grandchildren were involved there." Marion's perfectly painted smile faltered. "Oh, well, children, always involved in something or other. Olivia, dear, I believe James is looking for you." But Elizabeth wasn't done. "I received the most heartwarming invitation from them. They're doing a special Christmas program tonight about bringing joy to children who might otherwise miss out on holiday celebrations. I was planning to stop by later." "How wonderful," I replied, watching Marion's face pale slightly. "You should go. I hear it's going to be quite meaningful." Other guests started chiming in. "Oh yes, I got that invitation too. Pastor Mike mentioned something about it at last week's charity meeting. Didn't they say something about a special presentation by local children?" Marion's attempts to steer the conversation elsewhere were increasingly desperate. "The caterer has prepared the most exquisite truffle infused." "Marion," Elizabeth interrupted, "you must be so proud that your grandchildren are involved in such a meaningful community service, especially at their young age." Just then, James arrived. He was not running late, as Marion had claimed he would be, but right on time and fully aware of our plan. He kissed my cheek and greeted his mother, whose relief at his arrival quickly turned to confusion as he announced, "Mother, I believe it's time we headed to the community center. We wouldn't want to miss the children's presentation." But the party," Marion sputtered. "Your father's special wassail bowl tradition." "Actually," Elizabeth interjected, "we'd all love to see what the community center has prepared. It is Christmas Eve, after all. What better time to support our local children?" Marion watched helplessly as her carefully orchestrated party began shifting focus. Her prestigious guests gathered their coats, enthusiastically discussing carpooling to the community center. "What have you done?" she hissed at me when no one looked. "I've done exactly what you asked, Marion. I kept the children away from your sophisticated party. But I never promised to keep your decision from your friends." When we arrived, the community center was warm and bright, filled with the kind of Christmas spirit that Marion's sterile decorations could never capture. Construction paper chains and children's artwork decorated the walls, and the smell of hot chocolate and cookies filled the air. Emma and Lucas were at the front of the room with other children, preparing for their presentation. Their faces lit up when they saw us. But they stayed focused on their tasks, just as they'd practiced. Marion's friends filed in, exclaiming over the decorations and the apparent joy in the room. Pastor Mike welcomed everyone warmly, making special mention of the Heritage Society members' attendance. Then the children's presentation began. Each child spoke about what Christmas meant to them and shared something they'd made. When Emma's turn came, she held up her photo frame. "This is the ornament I made for my grandma," she said into the microphone. "It's a picture of me and my brother with her from last Christmas, when we baked cookies together. But this year, she said children aren't allowed at her Christmas party because they're not sophisticated enough." You could have heard a pin drop in the room. Elizabeth and the other society members turned to stare at Marion, whose face had gone from pale to crimson. Lucas went next, clutching his dinosaur blanket for courage. "I drew this picture of our family," he said softly, "but I had to draw Grandma Marion far away because she doesn't want us around for Christmas anymore." Marion stepped forward, perhaps to stop what was happening, but James touched her arm firmly. "Let them finish, Mother," he said quietly. The other children shared similar stories of feeling unwelcome, being told they weren't good enough, and being excluded from family celebrations. It wasn't just about Christmas anymore. It was about every child who'd ever been made to feel less than perfect. "This is why we created this celebration," Pastor Mike explained to the crowd. "We want to ensure that every child knows they are valued, loved, and worthy of celebrating Christmas, regardless of how sophisticated they may or may not be." Elizabeth stepped forward, dabbing at her eyes. "Marion," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the room, "I had no idea you'd excluded your grandchildren from Christmas. This is not what the Heritage Society stands for. We fund programs that support families, not tear them apart." The aftermath of the community center presentation was swift and devastating for Marion. Elizabeth pulled her aside immediately while other Heritage Society members gathered around Emma and Lucas, praising their bravery and admiring their handmade gifts. "I simply cannot understand," Elizabeth declared loudly enough for everyone to hear, "how anyone could look at these precious children and decide they weren't sophisticated enough for Christmas." Marion attempted damage control, her voice shrill with desperation. "I was just trying to host an elegant evening." Olivia twisted everything around. "Did Olivia make you ban your grandchildren from Christmas?" James asked, finally speaking up. "Did she force you to choose your social status over your family?" "James, darling, you don't understand." "No, Mother, I understand perfectly now. I've watched you chip away at Olivia's confidence for years, criticize our parenting, and make subtle jabs at our children. But this, excluding them from Christmas, that's unforgivable." The children's presentation had evolved into a joyous Christmas party. Emma and Lucas were surrounded by love and acceptance. Their handmade ornaments were proudly displayed on the community center's tree. The contrast between this warm celebration and Marion's stark, adults-only soiree couldn't have been more striking. "The Heritage Society Board must discuss your position," Elizabeth informed Marion. "We support family values, not social climbing at the expense of children." Marion's carefully constructed social world was crumbling. Her sophisticated Christmas party lay abandoned, her prestigious position in jeopardy, all because she couldn't see the true meaning of the holiday. I did mean," she stammered, but no one was listening anymore. Her friends were too busy enjoying real Christmas spirit with the children she deemed unworthy of her presence. Later that evening, as we prepared to leave, Emma approached her grandmother, holding out the photo frame ornament. "You can still have this, Grandma Marion," she said softly. "Everyone deserves a Christmas present, even if they made a mistake." That simple act of forgiveness from a 7-year-old finally broke through Marion's carefully maintained facade. She took the ornament with trembling hands, looking at it for the first time, the careful decoration, the happy photograph, the love that went into making it. "I've been horrible, haven't I?" she whispered, tears spilling down her perfectly made-up face. "Yes," I replied honestly, "but it's Christmas. And like Emma said, everyone deserves a chance to make things right." Marion spent Christmas Eve at the community center, her designer dress collecting glitter from the children's craft table, her perfectly coiffed hair slightly mussed from hugging her grandchildren. It wasn't the sophisticated evening she'd planned, but it was genuine, warm, and full of the true spirit of Christmas. The following year, Marion's Christmas party was very different. Her house was filled with children's laughter, handmade decorations hung proudly alongside her expensive ornaments, and Emma and Lucas had helped bake cookies for everyone. The Heritage Society members brought their grandchildren, and no one cared about being sophisticated. Sometimes it takes losing everything you thought you wanted to find what you need. Marion learned that lesson the hard way, but she knew it well. Our family Christmas photo that year showed her on the floor playing with Lucas and his dinosaurs. Her perfect hair mussed, her designer clothes slightly wrinkled, and her smile more genuine than I'd ever seen. Elizabeth often remarks that the community center Christmas celebration became a beloved tradition, reminding everyone that the holiday's true sophistication lies in bringing families together, not tearing them apart. For me, I learned that sometimes the best response to cruelty isn't anger or revenge, but simply allowing the truth to come to light. Marion's actions revealed who she was, and her redemption came from finally seeing herself through her grandchildren's eyes. Emma still has the photo of that Christmas Eve at the community center. In it, Marion is helping her hang an ornament, both covered in glitter and smiling. It's not sophisticated or elegant, but it's real. And that's what Christmas should be about.